What up, grinders? We're back again trying to win FNM with the MTG Foundation Starter Collection. Last week I played Mono Blue. If you didn't watch that video, make sure to click the link and go watch that. I ended up going 3-1 somehow. Pretty surprised that I managed to go 3-1 with the starter collection. Especially because I ended up playing Mono Blue because I didn't think there were going to be very many red decks. Since the week prior, when I played, there were, I think, maybe one in the whole room. Somehow this time, as you probably saw in the last video, there were a good handful of red decks, and I played against 3 of them. Somehow I went 2-1 against them, so we ended up going 3-1. And like I'd said before, this week we're gonna we tried getting a pack per win, and then also however many packs I earned in prizes. The thing about my Friday Night Magic is that it is free to play, but the prizes are definitely indicative of that. Even though I went 3-1, I didn't get any prizes for my record. But we do a pack round at the end, so if you win the last round, you get a pack. So I've got 3 packs from 3 wins, and then 1 pack from the pack round. I decided to switch it up this week and do Duskworn. Maybe I should just stick with Foundations and try and round out play sets of cards, but I thought it'd be more fun to switch it up a little bit and open some Duskworn packs. I'm still not super sure how I want to continue adding cards to the pool. I feel like a pack per win is pretty good. It'll reward me for, trying and actually getting wins, and punish me when I do bad, so I could see that being a pretty good way to go forward. I'm still not super locked in on that, so make sure to drop a comment if you have any thoughts on how I should go about adding more cards to the card pool. So this was the deck I played, and let's open up these packs and see what we get. Okay, so we're going to open up 4 Duskworn packs, and then take a look at some options that we'll have to play in FNM tonight. And I think going forward, and I haven't done it yet or anything, but I don't think I'm going to play the same archetype back to back. I played Mono Blue last week, so I think I'm going to play anything but Mono Blue. I'll try and avoid playing Mono Blue Splash Red, but if I get something crazy out of my packs to make me want to do that, then I will. But I will not play pure Mono Blue again this week. Maybe next week, but I think it's more fun if I switch it up. But yeah, without further ado, let's get into the pack opening. Is this a rare? It is, I think. No, it is not. With how foil it is, the set symbol looked like a rare. Is the rare in the front now? Alright. This card's probably decent. Swamp. And Ghostly Dancers. One thing I am worried about this set is, it's a lot of enchantment strategies. Or synergies, so, it may not go well with the other stuff that we have, but we'll see. Ghostly Dancers is a pretty solid card in Limited. I don't know how it'll perform in Standard, but this card is pretty strong. It's a 5-mana 2/5. When it enters the battlefield, I can return an enchantment from my graveyard to my hand, or I can unlock a door of a room I control. And then on top of that, whenever an enchantment I control enters, and whenever I fully unlock a room, I get a 3/1 Flying Spirit. So this card is pretty strong. If we get more enchantment synergies, maybe, if we keep opening up Duskworn packs, I could see this being a solid card for our deck. There's Sheltered by Ghosts. This card, speaking of good enchantments, Sheltered by Ghosts is pretty insane, especially with apparently all the red decks that we have at locals now. So I'm definitely going to consider playing a deck that'll include Sheltered by Ghosts. So that's a sweet pickup, and it's worth a good chunk of money right now. I think it's $6 or $7. Nothing else too amazing from that pack, but we'll check out the next one. I guess we'll do the little trick, so that we get the rare at the end. A little more fun that way. This card is pretty decent, especially if I am trying to move into like a enchantment strategy. It's a pretty strong one. Wait, I messed up. There's 2 foils? Alright. Well. Alright. No tricks for me. Alright, so we got a black-white land. That's cool, I guess. I don't know how good that is, but seems decent. Alright, so what's this card do? 2 mana. When you unlock this door, this room deals damage equal to the number of cards in your hand to target creature and opponent controls. So, I mean, on turn 2, that's probably like a 2 mana deal 5. I mean, it'd get a little worse later in the game, but still decent removal. And if we happen to be playing blue as well, when we open this door, you have no maximum hand size, and at the end of your turn, you'll draw a card. So, seems like a decent card. Nothing great, though. This card, when you unlock this door, tap up to 1 target creature and put 2 stun counters on it. It's like tempo removal. Monstrous Emergence is actually pretty decent. It's a bite, but it's also from your hand, so you're not worried about your opponent blowing out your removal spell by killing your creature and getting 2 for 1. Attack wasn't bad, but let's go on to the next one. Alright, so I don't look like an idiot again. I'm not even going to mess around with trying to change the order. Cool, we got a foil rare. 3 mana 2/4. Whenever this card enters or attacks, if there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, distribute 2 +1/+1 counters among 1 or 2 target creatures. Then, if there are 6 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, double the number of +1/+1 counters on those creatures. So, something like this might be a little hard for me to pull off with my limited card pool, but if we don't end up getting the win, you know, the card pool will grow to the point where maybe this card could be something decent. It is a 3 mana 2/4, so I mean, it's not the worst thing. So, yeah, it might be worth looking into. We got another foil land. What is this? 4 mana, discard your hand, then draw X cards, by X the number of card types in your graveyard. Okay, so like the ominous, omnivorous, fly trap, you know, it's another card types matters in your graveyard card, so might not be the best card right now, but it could be better later on. I haven't seen a lot of these cards. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature or enchantment, or pay 2. It deals 5 damage to target creature. If that creature would die, exile it instead. Okay, so that seems decent. I mean, it's a 4 mana, deal 5, exile, and then you have the option to reduce the cost by 2 by sacrificing a creature or enchantment. Definitely not great, but I could see it being nice to have, especially if, you know, we're worried about playing against like Shieldred or something. With our limited card pool, it's probably a nice one to have in the pool. Okay. Otherwise, pack was kind of mid. Nothing too amazing. And let's open up fourth pack. Okay. Unidentified hover ship. I think I've seen some people like try and play this card in standard, but it's not anything amazing. It's a 3 mana 2/2 vehicle with flying. When it enters, exile up to 1 target creature with toughness 5 or less. And when it leaves the battlefield, the exiled card's owner manifests dread. So they'll never get they'll never get the card back. So it is kind of nice that it does permanently deal with 5 toughness creatures, something like Shieldred, like I mentioned before. or any like big threatening thing. You know, not too many things have more than 5 toughness, so he does deal with most creatures. And it's a 2/2 flyer that only requires crew 1, so that's not bad. Threats around every corner. I mean, if we get enough Manifest Dread stuff, we could try and build around it. Like, my opponent was playing the first FNM that I played in, but it would take quite a bit, I think. At the beginning of your second main phase, if Glimmer Seeker is tapped, draw a card. If you control a Glimmer creature, if you don't control a Glimmer creature, create a 1/1 Glimmer. Okay. It's not bad. Okay. You know, the Shelter by Ghosts was a huge hit. If anything, you know, this is the best card we pulled. Definitely gonna have to go back over some of the older cards and see if they interact very well with any of the new stuff we got. But like I was saying, I don't think we can really do any sort of like card type thing. We did get some enchantment synergies, well, we got a pretty good enchantment synergy and then some decent enchantments, so I'll probably take a look to see what other cards we have for doing something like that. Glimmer Seeker might not be bad. Overall though, I just don't even know what I'm gonna do this week. Yeah, so I guess I'm gonna jump in there and see what we can scrounge together. Okay, so after quickly going through some stuff, I think the first thing I'm going to look at is the white cards that we have. Some of the removal that we've gotten already was enchantment-based removal, so I mean, I don't know how good it's going to look, but I think I'm going to check that out. Especially after last week with how many red decks there were. I'm thinking, like, if I could just play a lot of life gain, I might just be able to steal a bunch of wins against the red decks, especially if I play against as many as I did before. I will need to have like some sort of a strategy in case the game's going longer, so I might look into like blue maybe like blue-white, blue-black, or white-black. Another option would be like green-white and try and be a little bit more aggressive. So yeah, I'm gonna pull out all the white cards and see what we're working with. So this would definitely be a consideration. Like, we need cuts. Probably wouldn't play the Fumigate because we're trying to be a bit more aggressive. But this could definitely be an option. So a big consideration now is like, what would be the best color to pair with the white? I mean, green does look pretty enticing because of the Anthem and the Unflinching Courage, and also Llanowar Elves is honestly just pretty strong in an aggressive deck, especially if we have decent 3-drops. I mean, we don't have anything amazing on 3, but just being able to accelerate and dump your hand as fast as possible, it's pretty big in aggressive strategies. So I think the next thing I'm going to look at is what a green-white deck might look like, so let's check that out. So I went through the mono-green deck that I played before. Dryad Militant would probably go in the mono-white deck also. Just another Savannah line, you know, 1 mana 2/1. Which does make mono-white look even a little bit better because having a 6th 1-drop is pretty nice. But from the green deck at least, so far, I've only really seen, you know, like the Llanowar Elves are very nice. And Snakeskin Veil is really good. Especially because we have like a bunch of auras in the deck, and when you're playing auras, it's pretty risky because if your opponent has a removal spell, you can just get 2 for 1, and it can be pretty backbreaking. So things like Snakeskin Veil to give hexproof, and also like Shardinage Rescue, like things like that to protect your creatures and stop yourself from getting 2 for 1 is pretty big. Other than that, I mean, Primal Might's just a really good card. It's a kill spell, and then it also lets you get a lot of damage in. But these are most of the cards that would make me want to play green outside of course, these two. But these two are really good cards. So, you know, these 8, 9 cards might be worth, you know, trying the green out. I did forget to pull out the monstrous emergence. Yeah, so I'm gonna check out what this aggro build might look like, and then I think we'll look at a more control-y strategy. Alright, so some other green cards that I think would be decent considerations are Bushwhack, Wildborn Preserver, and Zrock. Is it really worth playing green? Like, elves are cool, but our cards aren't really powerful enough to merit doing Llanowar Elf things. I mean, Unflinching Courage and Anthem of Champions are really strong. But is it worth it? I just don't know. So, I think this is what I would play if I'm playing green-white. I just don't know if I can merit playing a Llanowar Elf deck with having all my dual lands come into play tapped. Like, if I had the normal standard mana base and I had, you know, even 8 dual lands that'll come into play untapped that are green-white, I think this is like the deck I'd play for sure today. But I just feel a little sus playing green just to play Llanowar Elves when a lot of the times I'm going to have Llanowar Elves in my hand that aren't doing anything. So I'm going to think on this deck more and check out a different shell for the white decks. Maybe I do just try mono white. Like, I do have something like Linden the Steadfast Queen. Since I wasn't initially thinking I was looking at mono white, I didn't pull her out and a few other cards. So maybe let's actually see what a mono white 60 card deck would look like. I just realized this is a 2-mana 2/2 flyer. That's crazy. I don't know how I didn't process that before. That is like really well statted. So this is 37 spells, which would be 23 lands. Yeah, honestly, with how scuffed the mana base is, I think this is what I would play over green-white right now. So yeah, as much as I like the green cards, there's just not enough of them, and our mana is just not good enough. But yeah, I think doing something like this is actually the way to go if we're trying to be aggressive. I do wish that there were more like life gain payoffs. There are some decent ones, but yeah, this is definitely going to be a consideration. Next I'm going to look at black, because that's the other like life gain color that we have support for. So let's check that out. So the awkward thing with playing black-white is that it just seems kind of mid. Like, I really want to play Fiendish Panda. It's another exemplar / pride mate. You know, it grows whenever we gain life. But then, other than that, there's nothing I'm really too excited for when it comes to like synergizing with the whole life gain thing. I just don't think it's really worth splashing a color if we're trying to like utilize the whole life gain strategy. So as far as like trying to be like an aggressive like life gain deck, I think this is probably the best we can do. So I'm gonna, you know, kind of keep this little pile together, and I'm gonna check out Black-White Control. Ever since I opened the pool, I've been kind of wanting to try Black-White Control. It will utilize some of the same cards, but it'll be quite a bit different. I don't know if we have enough cards yet to make it good enough, but yeah, let's check that out. So this is 37. Typically, I probably want like 24, since we are playing a bit of a slower, grindier deck. I do wonder if Gatekeeper is... Oh. Do wonder if Gatekeeper is too much of a liability. It is double black to play, and then its kicker to have your opponent sacrifice a creature is also black, so that would be a lot of black sources for our deck to guarantee. I think 2 is pretty reasonable to make happen, but the third one might be a little hard with how janky our mana base is. So I think Malakar, or Gatekeeper of Malakar, will be the cut for this build. I really like the rest of the cards. You know, we have things that replace themselves, like the Inspiring Overseer, Helpful Hunter. We have our life gain payoffs, like the Pride Mates, the Cat Collector, Exemplar of Light, and Fiendish Panda. We are playing enough creatures for Fiendish Panda to actually, you know, be able to play off of. We just have some strong cards up top. Mascar Worm is a bit of a risk. It is also triple black, like the Gatekeeper of Malakir. So I could see also not playing that. I wish there was a better, like another top big creature that we could play. Like if we opened up like an Overlord or something in our Dustmourn packs. But there really isn't another good option. There's this guy, but we can't really reanimate him, and he costs 8. Because when it enters, if you cast it from your hand, it gets a divinity counter. While it has a divinity counter, it's indestructible, and you can remove a divinity counter to have each opponent discard their hand. So, like, if we could reanimate this and it could do all that, I think this would be a better play over the Massacre Worm, but I just don't think it's good enough. Massacre Worm might end up just being a better sideboard card, because I'm kind of worried about it being bad in a lot of matchups. Something like Vampiric Rites could be a good option. We can sacrifice a creature to gain a life, draw a card. We don't have that many cards that we want to sacrifice, but it would combo really well with Cat Collector, who whenever you gain a life, you'll get a 1/1. So like every turn, ours and our opponents, we can use Vampiric Rites to sacrifice the cat to gain a life to get a cat and draw a card. So a combo with Cat Collector is kind of nice, and then we have some like dinky creatures that we don't mind sacrificing. But if we don't have those cards in play, this card would be kind of bad. So it's definitely something to keep in mind. It's definitely some strong synergy opportunities with Vampiric Rites. I wish we had like more copies of it though. Maybe make it more worth like building around. Okay, so some cards I forgot about that we ended up pulling from packs include things like Pilfer. Just being able to look at your opponent's hand and take a card is pretty important. I think it's probably worth playing in our slower, grindier deck. And I forgot I do have another way to reanimate, so that does make the whole Zetalpa plan a little more incentivizing. Still feels a little loose. I am kind of worried that Zetalpa will just like get stuck in our hand and we'll never be able to play it because we don't have ways to discard it. So I'm still unsure about that. And then these are the 2 other lands that I've opened. So if we are playing the Zetalpa strategy, I don't think we will be playing the Indulgence. Probably don't need to play Valorous Stance. It's a little situational. It's not going to be good against aggro, so I don't really want it in my main deck, because I don't want to just get ran down by aggressive decks, so maybe that'll just be better in the side. I can also see sideboarding Feed the Swarm as well as Seeker's Folly, just because they're more situational. I do like Trivia Hunger a lot just because it gains us life. Even though it's 3 mana and your opponent will get to choose what they sacrifice, just the fact that it gains us life seems really nice. Something like Joust Through is also a card that might be better for the sideboard. It is like one of the better cards against aggro strategies, but it's probably pretty bad against non-aggressive decks. So I think I'm gonna put the hover ship in the deck. It's removal, and we do have a lot of like little creatures that we can like crew it with. So it seems like a pretty solid card for the deck actually. I am kind of tempted to play something like Angelic Destiny, but I'm just so scared of getting 2-for-1 and just like losing the value war that I don't think I'm gonna play it. I really wish there was more sacrifice outlets, things like Vampiric Rites, because I think the Aristocrats deck would be really fun to play and actually be pretty powerful, but we're just kind of short on cards for that to be a successful strategy. I do always forget about Steel Hellkite. If we are playing like this mid-range deck, I think Steel Hellkite is a strong include. And if we are going to be playing these reanimate cards, I want cards in my deck that are worth reanimating. So having something like that in here seems good. So we're at 36, which would be 24 lands, which is kind of where we want to be. Looking through once more, I am kind of worried about playing something like Felidar Retreat. If our goal is to like beat aggro, something like this is a bit of a liability. It's not quite fast enough to really beat things like that, and honestly, in the standard format, Felidar Retreat might just be too slow in general. So maybe we don't want to play something like that. I think the last card I'm going to add is actually Defiled Crypt, Cadaver Lab. The Cadaver Lab is pretty solid just as is. It's 1 mana, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So that effect by itself is pretty strong. The other side, Defiled Crypt. Whenever 1 or more cards leaves your graveyard, create a 2/2. That can only trigger once each turn. But I mean, even just the Cadaver Lab side, you know, that's a card I would consider playing. But then on top of that, we can use the Defiled Crypt side if we have time. You know, we can use that side first, then later use the lab side, so we'll get a 2/2 just from this. And then also we have Zombify, Live or Die, and Null Priest. So we have ways that remove cards from our graveyard to trigger Defiled Crypt more. I think, yeah, cards like Infernal Vessel, when it dies, it comes back. So it does go into the graveyard and then leave the graveyard, so that would also trigger Defiled Crypt. And it's actually whenever a card leaves your graveyard, not even just creatures like I was initially thinking. So Ghostly Dancers, when it picks up an enchantment from our graveyard, it'll trigger there also. So we do have a few things that trigger the Defiled Crypt side. So I think this is going to be the last slot in the deck. I'll put it here. So yeah, I think this is what we're going to try this week. This seems fun. I've been wanting to try Black-White. I just can't really decide what the best way to play it is. I don't even know if this is the best way to play it, but it seems like a fun way to play it. I think we should be pretty good against red decks. I do wonder if we have like, if my removal choices are correct. Seems pretty good. I don't know how good the Pride Mates are gonna be and whatnot, but I don't know. This should be fun. We have some interesting synergies in here, so yeah, let's get it sleeved up and figure out the mana base. Alright, I was thinking about it, and if I was playing more of like a hard control, like just a literal pile of removal, I would think Zatalpa is more needed, but since I'm playing more of like a mid-range grindier deck, I feel like this is just, playing these cards are just going to give me like dead draws in my deck, so I'm going to cut them for these. Forgot about the Cultivator Caravan in the pool. I think these would just be better overall in most games. I just don't want dead cards in my deck. Alright, this is the deck that I'm going to play today. Um, just pretty good old classic Black-White Midrange with some life gain synergies in here. Uh, just gonna try and mid-range them out. There's a lot of strong removal, and I'm hoping I can like feast on the aggro decks. But yeah, I feel like this is gonna be a fun deck to play. The more I thought about it, I think mono white might be the better deck of the two, but this just seems more fun to me. Thinking about the decks that I've played against, for the most part, I think mono white would be better against them, except for maybe the Oculus decks. Those decks, I think, having like some solid removal is a bit more important. Uh, it's mostly the same removal, but we also have Feed the Swarm, Pilfer to discard the reanimate spells, and like Tribute to Hunger, Mortify, and then Fumigate if they ever get too big. So those are some of the things that we're gaining by playing the more mid-rangey strategy. One card that I haven't really talked about at all is Desecration Demon. Card's a house. I haven't played with it in a while, but I really enjoyed it in Standard before. So yeah, this is what we're playing, hopefully for better than worse. And then for the sideboard, we got these three artifacts that I've been putting in all my sideboards. And we got these cards. And we got some artifact enchantment removal, Massacre Worm to deal with aggro decks or decks that are going too wide. Wilt Leaf seems nice if I run into that person who is playing like mono black discard. I don't know if they'll even be there, but we got room in the board. I've got the Knights of Grace and Malice. Obviously, if I play against like a black deck, I'm gonna play Grace. If I play against a white deck, I'll play Malice. And even against aggro decks, I might just bring these two in just because they're 2/2 first strikers and oftentimes 3/2 first strikers, which will be good against aggro. You got Duress, probably against midrange or control, as well as Vampiric Rites for grindier matchups. That'll be really helpful. Then we got like Deathmark and Devout Decree. This destroys green and white cards, and this exiles black or red creatures or planeswalkers. So those are just nice sideboard cards if they line up against the decks I play against. I thought about main decking Demolition Field, but my mana's so bad, I only really want it if I need it. So I think I'm just gonna board it in case they have like man lands in their deck and stuff. And then fill out our retreat. At first I was going to main deck this card, but I think it's a little too slow in a deck like this. Like in mono white, where I'm mostly going to use it to give all my guys +1/+1. I think it's better. But in this deck, I'm mostly going to be making 2/2s with it, which I think is only really good against slower matchups. So yeah, that's my sideboard. Wish me luck, and let's try and get some wins and earn some packs, and maybe even win FNM tonight. Alright, so this is round one playing Black-White Midrange, and we got a one-lander, so obviously we're still not back. Uh, we are playing against a blue-white enchantment deck. This hand has two lands, so we're gonna keep it. Can't ask for too much more out of the limited card pool. My opponent does start with a Leyline Axe, and then was able to apply some good pressure with Ethereal Armor on a Glimmer. Uh, on my side, I just fire off the Tribute to Hunger just to take some pressure off. My opponent starts using the Leyline Axe on the Fear of Isolation. I got the Cat Lady in play, mixed with the Shelter by Ghost. Relieve some pressure by taking out the Fear of Isolation and then giving me life gain to trigger the ability to create a 1/1 cat. My opponent does use a removal spell to get rid of my whatever that card is called. Um, They have to pay the ward. They do have enough to pay for it, so I have to sack my food in response to at least get my cat token, which is being represented with a dog token, since I don't have 1/1 cat tokens. My opponent, gets back in the same position after I cycle my 2-drop and 3-drop, draw a card. Uh, they play Sheltered by Ghosts with the Leyline Axe on the Fear of Isolation to, put a good amount of pressure. Unfortunately, they hit my creature that when it enters, I draw a card and gain a life. So on my turn, I swing out, kind of with the thought of like maybe I'll fumigate, but since they end up blocking, it's just better to play the hovercraft or hover ship and exile the Fear of Isolation for good this time. This gets my creature back. You're the Sheltered by Ghosts. And then, they end up playing another Fear of Isolation. I get the Banishing Light off and just kind of spew my hand out. I was kind of thinking I would hold back a bit to get value out of my board wipe, but it's just better to send it. Uh, they keep on adding to the board. The game gets a bit drawn out, but I play the Steel Hellkite, and I kind of felt like that would just close the game out. It attacks. Once it connects, I'm able to activate its ability to destroy all 3 drops on my opponent's side of the board. This clears out, I think, 4 permanents, gets me 2 creatures back. Both of those creatures trigger. I get a food token. I get to exile one of their creatures. And I mean, from that point, it's game. So my opponent ends up conceding. We move on to game two. In game two, we do open up a bit of a slow hand. 5 lands isn't ideal, but we have a decent amount of like high cost cards in our deck, so I end up keeping. We have the turn 2 knight, which isn't bad. We play the pilfer, look at our opponent's hand, and we see that my opponent is hurting on white sources. They have the Enduring Innocence, but they only have one white source, so they can't play it, and they have a bunch of auras. So I'm able to just apply a good amount of pressure, and that ends up closing out the game. All right, so round number two. I'm playing against a newer player. I don't have sleeves. Open up my hand, and I only have 1 land, so obviously send that back. And then my next hand, it is 5 lands, but we're putting 1 card back. It's a 3-drop and a 4-drop, so I end up keeping that. We scry and find removal, so the hand's looking pretty good. We get the Exemplar of Light out, which is a pretty good threat, especially against a weaker deck like my opponent's. And then I'm able to play the Angelic Overseer, drawing a card, gaining a life, and then Exemplar of Light is then able to get a counter and draw an additional card. And so really just gets the angel pretty strong, and then I get to pilfer, look at my opponent's hand, and they only have 1 flyer in their hand, so I end up taking that, which allows my creatures to apply a lot of pressure. I end up playing a Fiendish Panda, just so I have another threat that's growing with all the life gain that I have going on. And that ends up being enough pressure until they end up killing the Angelic Overseer. At that point, I just kind of want to focus on building a board and getting my panda big enough so that way maybe I can return the Angelic Overseer or Exemplar of Light. I end up flickering the Overseer, allowing me to get the Enter the Battlefield trigger again. Uh, and then I end up returning the Exemplar of Light to my hand, and I'm able to just push in enough damage to close out game one. Going into game two, my hand's not too great, but we do have 3 lands, one of which is a dual land, so we got 2 of each color, and we got some spells to cast, so I end up being somewhat aggressive with my spells, and I'm lucky enough to find my one of Exemplar of Light again. And between that and the Johnny's Pride mate, I'm able to just keep growing those two and apply a lot of pressure. My opponent at one point didn't cast any spells on one of their turns. I follow up with a Desecration Demon and an AoE, and that ends up being enough to close out the game. Alright, on to round three. I know my opponent's playing mono red because he plays it pretty consistently. Opening hand just wasn't quite good enough. Two lands, but not much else to do with it. We check out the second hand. It's a one lander. Obviously, I gotta send that back. Uh, it's not gonna be enough. And we draw a third hand, and it does have Sarah in it, so it's definitely a keep. We also have acceleration on three to make it so that way we can, hopefully play uh, Sarah on four. Unfortunately, my opponent does have a one drop. Fortunately, though, I do get to draw an Authority of Consuls and get that out pretty early. Unfortunately, my opponent doesn't play many creatures, and he plays the case on turn three, which he discards a card to draw two, and then at the end of his turn, if he has no cards in hand, it gets solved. And then in the upkeep, he'll discard his hand and draw two cards. The card is very problematic. Unfortunately, I miss my top land on turn four, so gotta play the hover ship, and then we end up playing the Sarah on five, which, is hopefully good enough. Unfortunately, my opponent has double Helix, chooses the Helix face instead of the Angel, and so that's able to just kind of take over the game, and my opponent ends up conceding. I assume they're just trying to close the game out before I could start gaining life. So on to game two. Again, we have a one lander, so obviously we have to send that back. Open up our next hand. It's a one lander. Obviously, we're sending that back. And on our five card hand, we find lands and spells. I end up putting a land and a banishing light back just because I want to have mana in case I end up drawing my big life linkers. So I opt to put a banishing light back. Uh, Game two is going pretty decent. I am playing a lot of my creatures that draw a card. My opponent is able to apply a good amount of pressure. I ended up holding the Null Priest because I want to try and get a lifelink out of it, and my opponent did have the removal spell, so that ended up paying off. Once I play the Exemplar of Light, unfortunately, my opponent's able to out it with a Lightning Strike. Uh, I eventually get Desecration Demon into play. I'm applying a good amount of pressure, feeling pretty good about the game. I have my opponent down to six. I'm at 13. Get Alien to play, so I'm in a pretty comfortable spot where I can gain life if I need to. Unfortunately, my opponent gets his second case out and is able to find the removal spell, the Lightning Helix for the Alien. I end up deciding just to sacrifice the Charming Prince to gain two life instead of sacrificing the Desecration Demon, since Desecration Demon's presenting lethal, and my opponent only has one creature. If I draw a removal spell, then maybe it can just sneak in. My opponent ends up living long enough that he's able to deal with my Null Priest and kind of just keeps the Desecration Demon at bay. Uh, he plays the Pyromancer, which was really good, getting chip damage in and then sacrificing it, and eventually is just able to get enough damage through with all of the card advantage that he's able to generate. Going into game three, uh, the hand's pretty fine, I have a removal with life gain built in, which I ended up using, and then I have acceleration into Real Caracal, so the hand's pretty nice. I do get a decent turn four, where I get to put two permanents in play, and then the following turn play the Real Caracal. Unfortunately, my opponent's able to out the Caracal right after I play it with a Lightning Strike. Later on, I get Cat Collector out, uh, and I my opponent attacks. It's a pretty bad attack, because I can just sacrifice my food, make a 1/1, and just kind of blow out his blocks. So I assume they have removal to blow out me getting a cat token, and the following turn, I was correct. My opponent plays Burst Lightning, which I then in response sacrifice my food to gain life and get my cat token. Uh, and they ended up playing another Burst Lightning, so I know that's the card that they had in their hand. Later on, I get my opponent pretty low, down to 5. They're able to play another case, put a chump blocker into play to stop my caravan from being able to deal lethal damage. I'm still going to just crew and attack and pass the turn. Following turn, they bolt, get some more damage in, and they're able to helix my cat token, bringing them up to 8. And so even though I draw ghostly dancers with no value because I have no enchantments in my yard, I can crew the caravan, swing for 5. They're still at 3 life. And on the following turn, they burst lightning, and a couple more burn spells to finish out the game. All right, on to the last round, round 4, the pack round. Unfortunately, I'm playing against Eddie Murky. Uh, just lost to a matchup I was feeling pretty good against, and this one seems a little shaky. I do end up keeping my hand just because this lands on spells. And my opponent gets to open up with a Storm Chaser's talent into a Otter. When I pilfer, their hand's kind of medium. I do take the beans because then they're just kind of stuck with seeds and a crab. They do end up playing the crab. I exile it as soon as they play it. I try to apply pressure as quickly as I can. They drop another Eddie Merc crab, unfortunately. In response, I crew my caravan, get some damage in, but ultimately they're able to just keep swinging. I can't block too well. They pump up their otters. They're able to get a good bit of damage in. Uh, I, I had a Nighthawk. It got bounced. We draw a land for turn. And they end up having another Eddie Merc Crab, which ends up closing out the game 1. On to game 2, our opening hand only has a land, 1 land, so obviously we send that back. Uh, our next hand is not the greatest. It has lands and spells though on 6, so I kind of have to just keep it. I end up sending back the caravan. Maze Mind Tome, trying to dig deep. Finds a car call, but it's like we don't have lands, we don't have creatures, so I have to bottom that. Goes again, we find Banishing Light. We already have removal. We really just need creatures, so we bottom that. And we find a land. Not quite what we're looking for, but I mean, it's better than the other cards, I guess. My opponent does get to go Storm Chaser's talent into Beans, unfortunately. Eventually, we do find a creature. I end up accidentally only paying 2 mana to play the card, which, that's my bad. I was pretty checked out of the game at that point. So I end up playing Maid's Mind Tome when I shouldn't have been able to. But my opponent cash grabs into a terror, plays terror, draws a card, plays another terror, draws another card. So I'm getting pretty buried at this point. I eventually get to play Sheltered by Ghosts. After paying the ward cost, my opponent just exiles it, so I don't actually get to take out one of his terrors. Next turn, plays a third terror, draws 2 cards, and then plays an Eddie Merc Crab, drawing another 2 cards. And at that point, it kind of does it. I use Maze Mind Tome one more time to try and think about it for a bit, but ultimately, we don't have enough mana for Fumigate, so I think we're just drawing dead. I end up, just making actions just because I wanted to play the game out, but it's really just for naught. My opponent untaps and plays this town. Uh, I kind of explained to him how I should just use it to win the game, so that ends up being that. Thanks for watching, guys. We ended up 2-2. a little worse than I'd like, and sorry for not using the card images this time. Just been really busy, and sorry for the late upload, but hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, and look forward to next week.